It is 5:47 in the morning in Ogimi, and the wooden gate at the end of the path is already open. Someone came through it before the sun arrived. The gate belongs to Ushi Okushima, 96 years old, who has opened it every single morning for longer than most people watching this have been alive. The wood is worn smooth where her hand lands. That is what 96 years of the same small gesture looks like. Ogimi, in the hills of northern Okinawa, has one of the highest life expectancies of any municipality in Japan, the outlier within the country that already outlives every other large nation on Earth. When Dan Buettner documented it for National Geographic, what he found was not a supplement stack, not exotic superfoods, not a longevity clinic. It was behavior, small, specific, daily behavior, repeated with a consistency most of the world never achieves. 18 behaviors, if you want a number. I'm going to walk you through one full day in Ogimi, from before sunrise to the next morning's dawn, in the hands of three real people. Ushi, who is 96, Kamada Nakazato, 91, who has walked the same path to her garden every day for over 50 years, and Nabi Kinjo, 88, who has not missed a weekly Moai gathering in 63 years. Not one of these 18 habits involves a specific food. That is the thing to pay attention to. The gate is open. It is not yet 6 in the morning. The first habit begins in the dark, before anything else. Ushi wakes before sunrise, not because an alarm forces her to, not because she has something scheduled. She wakes because her body, after 96 years of this rhythm, no longer needs to be told when to begin. The light shifts outside the window. Something in her responds to it. She is on her feet before the room is fully visible. This is the first habit, waking before the sun. It is not mystical. The researchers who documented the Okinawa centenarian study, the longest-running study of centenarian populations ever conducted, started in 1975 and covering over 1,000 centenarians across Okinawa, found that circadian rhythm alignment is one of the most consistent features of the long-lived. Not the exact hour, not a specific wake-up time that everybody must match, but the alignment itself, waking with the light or just before it, going to sleep within a few hours of darkness, never fighting the clock, living in phase with the day. The science here touches the cortisol awakening response, the natural spike the body produces in the first 30 minutes after waking, which sets energy, immune function, and mental clarity for the day. Wake before a sudden alarm and that curve unfolds cleanly. Crash land into wakefulness, and it does not. Ushi has never read a paper about cortisol. She simply does what her grandmother did and her grandmother before that. She wakes when the darkness begins to soften. She is on her feet. The second habit happens immediately. She boils water. Not tea yet, water. Hot water with dried mugwort, which in Japanese is yomogi, a wild herb that grows in the hills above Ogimi. She has been doing this for as long as she can remember. She holds the cup in both hands. She stands at the window. She is not distracted. There is no phone. There is nothing to check. She drinks the hot water slowly in the dark, watching the sky begin to change color. This is the second habit. Hot water with mugwort, consumed slowly, standing still, watching the sky. What mugwort does inside the body is a separate conversation. What the stillness does is not separate. It is the point. Ushi's first 10 minutes every day are completely without input. No voices, no information, no decision-making. She stands, she drinks, she watches. The nervous system coming out of sleep has a chance to wake without being assaulted. The transition is gradual. The body arrives at the day instead of being thrown into it. Researchers call this state the hypnopompic transition, the period between sleep and full wakefulness, where the brain is doing something important. The prefrontal cortex is coming back online. The emotional regulation centers are resetting. This process takes time and it requires quiet. Most people in the modern world are on their phones before that process finishes. Ushi stands at the window with both hands on a hot cup and lets it complete. The third habit begins as the sky goes from dark blue to pale orange. The garden. Ushi's garden is not a metaphor. It is not a hobby. It is the thing she does between the hot water and the rest of the morning every single day. About 30 minutes. She tends it with a small tool that she has had for decades, a short-handled hoe. The handle is dark and smooth with use. The blade is worn at a particular angle from the way she works. She bends, she straightens, she reaches, she kneels occasionally. She is not racing. She is not trying to finish. She moves with the kind of deliberate ease that only comes from doing something so many times that the body has fully absorbed the movements. This is the third habit, 30 minutes in the garden every morning before anything else demands your attention. There is a woman in Ogimi named Kame Ogata. She was 97 when Buettner first visited the village, one of the elder members of the community. A woman who had spent most of her life working the small plots of land behind her house. She was asked once what she thought about during her morning garden work. The translator had to ask the question twice because the first time she seemed not to understand what was being asked. Then she answered, "Nothing in particular. The plants, the ground, whether the soil near the east wall was too dry." She was not doing two things at once. She was doing one thing completely for 30 minutes. That conversation stayed in Buettner's notes because it captured something that his years of Blue Zone research kept returning to. The way the people with the longest lives did not multitask. They did one thing, they finished it, they moved on. The physical component of this habit is not trivial, bending and straightening from the hips, reaching across the body, kneeling and rising from the ground. These are not exercises from a fitness protocol. They are movements with a purpose. The garden requires them, so the body makes them. The difference between purposeful movement and exercise is one of the more significant insights in longevity research. When movement has a reason outside itself, humans do it more consistently and with less resistance. Nobody in Ogimi has a gym membership. Nobody in this village wakes up and says they need to do their workout. They wake up and tend the thing that needs tending. There is a detail here I'm going to come back to. The fourth habit is how Ushi eats breakfast. She eats on the floor, on a tatami mat, cross-legged, her bowl at the level of her knees. She has never owned a dining table in the Western sense. The low table where she eats is a few inches off the ground. She sits directly on the mat. She lowers herself to sit. She rises when she is finished. This is the fourth habit, eating on the tatami mat, cross-legged, sitting low to the floor. Every time Ushi sits down for a meal, she performs the movement equivalent of a partial squat. Every time she rises, she reverses it. Over the course of a day, this happens multiple times. Over the course of a lifetime, this becomes a fundamental difference in hip strength, leg strength, balance, and floor mobility. The Okinawa centenarian study researchers noted that the ability to rise from the floor unassisted, what some call the sitting test, correlates with longevity more strongly than almost any other single physical measure. Not the ability to run a mile, not a specific heart rate, the floor, whether you can get down to it and back up. Ushi sits and rises from the floor multiple times every single day. She has done this her entire life. This is why she can still do it at 96. The fifth habit is the last one before the morning becomes the day. After breakfast, before she goes back inside, before the tasks of the day begin, Ushi walks to the gate. She walks barefoot. The path from her kitchen to the gate is perhaps 30 meters. The ground is uneven packed earth, some stones, grass at the edges. She walks this path slowly. She is not going anywhere. She is simply walking to the gate and back barefoot on varied ground. This is the fifth habit, walking barefoot to the gate before the day begins. Proprioception is the word for what is happening in her feet. The thousands of nerve endings in the sole feed the nervous system constant information about balance and position. On varied terrain, uneven and textured, those nerve endings stay active. Locked in cushioned shoes on flat floors all day, they go quiet. Over decades, that silence changes how the brain manages balance and fall risk, slowly and then suddenly obvious in someone's 70s. Ushi has never quieted them. Every morning, barefoot to the gate and back. Now move with me to the second piece. The sun is up. Komada Nakazato, 91, is already at her garden. She has been here since before Ushi finished her morning walk. Komada's garden is about 1.5 kilometers from her house. She has walked this same path since she was in her 30s. She knows every stone on it. She knows which turn catches the morning wind. She knows the specific spot where the bamboo overhangs the road and where it is always slightly cooler. This is the sixth habit. Walking to the neighbor or the destination, not driving or being driven. In Ogimi, as in every documented Blue Zone community, transportation by body, walking, cycling, carrying, is the default, not the choice of the health-conscious minority, not the exception for special occasions, the default. Kamada does not think of walking to her garden as exercise. She thinks of it as going to her garden. The movement is built into the purpose. This distinction matters more than it sounds because willpower is not required when the movement is simply how you get to the thing you were going to do anyway. The seventh habit is what Kamada does when she arrives. She weeds. For about 90 minutes most mornings, Kamada bends from the hips, reaches low, and works her way across the rows of her garden, pulling the small, unwanted plants from around the larger ones. She bends forward almost fully. She works with her hands close to the ground. She has a particular posture she falls into, knees slightly bent, weight shifted forward, hips doing most of the work. This is the seventh habit, weeding the garden bent over in full forward hip flexion for sustained periods. In studies of physical function in older adults, the single movement pattern that most predicts independence at 90 is not upper body strength, not aerobic capacity, not even balance by itself. It is the hip hinge, the ability to bend forward from the hips with load, to reach low, to work close to the ground. It is the movement a significant portion of people over 70 have lost almost entirely because chairs have replaced the floor, and nothing in modern daily life requires sustained forward bending from the hips. Kamada has done this for 50 years because the garden requires it. Her hip flexors, her hamstrings, her low back have never been allowed to shorten and stiffen the way they do in people who spend most of the day seated. What looks like simple garden labor is, biomechanically, one of the most demanding and most protective movement patterns for the aging body. And the reason she is 91, functionally independent, and can still reach the ground with her hands. The eighth habit emerges from the same garden. Kamada has no chairs in her work area. When she rests, which she does regularly, sitting for 10 minutes, sometimes drinking water, sometimes just quiet, she rests on the ground. She lowers herself to the earth. She sits cross-legged or with her legs folded to one side. She rises back up to continue working. This is the eighth habit. No chairs in the workspace. Rest on the ground. Not on a raised seat. The researchers who have documented centenarian movement patterns in Okinawa consistently note the number of floor-to-stand transitions per day. In villages like Ogimi, this number is 15, 20, sometimes more. In Western adults over 60, this number can fall to nearly zero. Every rest position is in a chair, a couch, or a bed. The muscles required to make that transition, the sequence of movements from floor to standing, do not maintain themselves without practice. They require the practice of doing them daily. There is a number in this section that surprised me. Stay with me. The ninth habit is how Kamada returns home. Not the walk back, though the walk back matters. The ninth habit is the sunset walk, which Kamada takes separately from her return from the garden. Late afternoon, the light changes. The temperature drops slightly. She walks not far, not fast, through the village, sometimes past Ushi's gate, sometimes toward the hillside path. 20 minutes, perhaps 30. No destination, just the movement in the evening air. This is the ninth habit, a deliberate sunset walk separate from all other movement of the day. The circadian science here mirrors the morning, the late afternoon cortisol decline, the shift in body temperature that signals to the nervous system that the day is ending, the physical movement that helps accelerate the metabolic transition from waking to resting. All of these are supported by movement in the late afternoon light. The evening walk is not exercise, it is a signal. It tells the body what time it is. It tells the body to begin preparing. Same village, different road, same logic. Now turn the page on this. Here is the related thread. Nabi Kinjo is 88. She has lived in Ogimi her entire life. She is in many ways the social architecture of this village made visible in one person. She knows everyone. She keeps track of everyone. She has, by her own account, never gone more than 2 days without seeing at least one of her moai, the word the Okinawans use for a lifelong social support group, the people you are bonded to from childhood, the people you meet regularly for the rest of your life. The 10th habit is the moai itself. Nabi's moai meets every week, has met every week for 63 years. There are 5 of them now. There used to be 7, but 2 have died. They meet on a specific day at a specific time at a rotating household. They talk. They sometimes bring something to drink. They sit together. The meeting lasts 2 to 3 hours. This is the 10th habit, the moai, a standing weekly meeting with a core group of lifelong contacts. The social science behind the moai is some of the most robust evidence in the entire Blue Zone literature. Chronic loneliness activates the same biological stress pathways as physical pain. Inflammation rises, the immune system shifts, and the brain's threat detection circuits stay in a low-grade state of activation that is simply absent in people with regular, meaningful contact. Nabi's moai is not a social nicety. It is a biological necessity her culture has built into a weekly institution. The 11th habit is smaller, quieter, and happens on days when the moai does not meet. Nabi calls one of her elderly neighbors, not from the moai, but a different friend, every other day. A brief call, 10 minutes, sometimes less. They check in. They ask how each person is feeling. They note if anything has changed. They say goodbye. This is the 11th habit, a brief, regular call to an elderly neighbor, not family, every other day. The distinction between family contact and peer contact in longevity research is meaningful. Family contact carries obligation. The relationship is structural, not chosen moment by moment. Peer contact in older age is different. It is chosen. It is maintained voluntarily. The decision to call, the act of reaching out, and the response to being called, each of these is a small reinforcement of social identity, a small reminder that you exist in someone else's world. Nabi calls because she wants to, because the person on the other end would notice if she did not. The 12th habit involves midday. Nabi almost never eats alone at lunch. Not because she is never alone, she is sometimes, but she has organized her life so that a shared midday meal is the default rather than the exception. She eats at someone else's house, or someone comes to hers, or she joins the older women who gather informally at one of the community spaces in the village. Eating is rarely a solitary act. The table is a social instrument. This is the 12th habit, eating lunch with at least one other person almost every day. Eating together triggers social bonding mechanisms independent of the food itself. The conversation slows the pace of eating. The attention, the laughter, these are not side effects. They are part of what the meal does biologically. Cortisol goes down, oxytocin goes up, and digestion happens under a different hormonal condition than the same meal eaten alone and fast. Nabi simply likes eating with people. She always has, and so she arranges her days so that she does. The 13th habit is the most misunderstood of everything I have found here. Before I describe what Nabi does, let me tell you what most people get wrong when they try to import this concept. They turn it into journaling. They write lists of things they are grateful for. They read back their own notes. They do it lying in bed, sometimes on their phone, sometimes while still half asleep. And then they say it did not work. The reason it did not work is that none of those variations include the 2 elements that make the practice in Ogimi neurologically distinct from a journaling exercise: standing upright and speaking out loud. Every morning before the hot water, before the gate, Nabi says something out loud. She stands in her kitchen, she does this standing, and she recites her ikigai, a short-spoken statement, less than a minute, that names what she is here for, who needs her, what she is going to do today that matters. She says it in the present tense, in the morning, every day. This is the 13th habit, ikigai morning recitation, a brief spoken statement of purpose, standing said aloud at the start of the day. The neuroscience of purposeful language is newer than most people realize. Speaking words of purpose, not reading them, not thinking them, but speaking them aloud, activates the brain differently than silent thought. The standing posture adds a physiological dimension. The morning timing orients the whole day's neural planning. Nabi recites who she is and why she is here before she does anything else. She told Bettner, "I wake up with something to give." The afternoon light changes in Ogimi in a particular way. It comes through the hills to the west at an angle that makes the gardens look a different color. More gold, more amber, less green. The village goes quieter. The pace of movement slows. This is the part of the day that Ogimi takes seriously in a way that most of the world has abandoned. The 14th habit is the Nemuri. Not sleep, not quite. A short, seated or lying rest in the early afternoon. 20 minutes, sometimes 30. Nabi does this almost every day. So does Ushi. So does Kamada when she returns from the garden. They are not embarrassed by it. They do not apologize for it. It is simply part of the day, as routine as the morning walk to the gate. This is the 14th habit, a brief afternoon rest, the Nemuri, 20 to 30 minutes without electronics after the midday meal. The Okinawa centenarian study documented Nemuri as a near-universal practice among the centenarian population they tracked. The more recent understanding of its function involves the glymphatic system, the brain's own cleaning mechanism, which is most active during sleep and which requires genuine rest to operate. Even a short afternoon rest allows the glymphatic cycle to advance. Over decades, this matters for cognitive function in ways that short daily sleeps may compound across a lifetime. Nabi sleeps lightly for this rest. Sometimes she does not sleep at all. She simply lies down, closes her eyes, and is still for 20 minutes. This is also sufficient. The nervous system shift, the parasympathetic recovery, the brief pause in metabolic activity, these do not require full sleep. They require stillness. The 15th habit belongs to the evening. After the sunset walk, after the evening meal, the people of Ogimi stop using electronics. Screens go dark. Or, for those like Ushi and Kamada and Nabi who have never been particularly screen-dependent, the quieting of the day becomes total. The transition to evening is managed by reducing stimulation, not increasing it. This is the 15th habit. No electronics after the evening meal. The blue light of screens suppresses melatonin production. This is documented, established, and not widely practiced. The problem with this knowledge is that it requires sustained nightly willpower to act on it because every evening the devices are present and the pull toward them is strong. In Ogimi, the pull is absent or weak. The village quiets. The habits of the evening are other than screens. The night belongs to the biological transition towards sleep. The 16th habit is sleep itself, and specifically its timing. The people here sleep early. Within 2 hours of full dark, most of the village is in bed. For Ushi, this means roughly 8:30 or 9 in the evening, depending on the season. For Nabi, similar. The alignment with the solar day, waking before the sun, sleeping within 2 hours of darkness, is not a lifestyle choice in the way that phrase is usually meant. It is a structural feature of how this community organizes time. This is the 16th habit. Sleep within 2 hours of full darkness, aligned with the seasonal light. The sleep itself is longer than what most Western adults get. 7 to 8 hours in Ogimi as the average, not the aspiration. The effects of sleep deprivation on the biomarkers of aging, from inflammatory cytokines to telomere length to insulin sensitivity, are among the most replicated findings in the field, but the timing may matter as much as the duration. Falling asleep when the body expects to, based on darkness, produces a qualitatively different sleep than fighting past that window and trying later. Sleep architecture and the hormonal cascade of the first 90 minutes are calibrated to the circadian clock. Early sleep hits the window. Late sleep misses it. There is one more piece before the day ends. Ushi has a small altar in the corner of her main room. It is not large. It holds a few photographs. Her mother, her grandmother, her husband who died decades ago. There are dried flowers. There is a small ceramic cup that has been there for years. Every evening, before she lies down to sleep, Ushi stands in front of this altar for about 5 minutes. She does not perform an elaborate ritual. She looks at the photographs. She thinks about the people in them. She speaks quietly sometimes or stays silent. She lights a stick of incense occasionally. This is the 17th habit. Ancestor altar contemplation. 5 minutes of quiet reflection on those who came before every evening. The psychological science of intergenerational connection suggests this practice does something specific. It situates the person inside a longer story than their own life. That sense of continuity is associated with lower mortality anxiety, better resilience, and a stronger sense of purpose. Ushi does not feel her life began with her birth or ends with her death. She feels part of a line that continues, and that felt sense, not the metaphysics of it, is protective in measurable ways. The 18th habit is the last one, and it does not happen in the evening. It happens in the morning. It is the first thing on this list. Here is the detail I promised you. Ushi opens the gate, not because she is going somewhere, not because she has an errand. She opens the gate, and she stands in the opening for a moment, and she looks at the road and the hills and the air in the morning. Then she closes it, and the day begins. I have described 17 specific habits across these 3 lives. This is the 18th, opening the gate, stepping briefly into the threshold between the private life and the shared world, not committing to the day yet, not yet dressed for it, not yet engaged with its demands. Just the gate, just the moment of looking out. The researchers do not have a clean mechanism for this one. There is not a tidy study design that captures what happens in a 96-year-old woman when she stands in her open gate in the pre-dawn quiet and looks at the hills. But every community with high longevity rates has some version of this practice. A daily ritual threshold, a moment of deliberate crossing between the private self and the communal world. A tiny ceremony that says, I am here, I am still part of this. Of the 3 rhythms of a day in Ojimi, the movement rhythm, the social rhythm, the rest and sleep rhythm, this moment belongs to all 3 and to none of them entirely. The challenge for someone who does not live in a village like Ogimi is that none of these 18 habits are particularly hard in isolation. Waking before sunrise, hot water in the morning quiet, 30 minutes in a garden, sitting on the floor barefoot in the morning, walking to the thing you are going to do, bending and working close to the ground, sitting on the earth when you rest, seeing your moai every week, calling someone 2 days from now, eating with a person, not alone, saying your purpose out loud in the morning, resting briefly in the afternoon, screens off after dinner, to bed before 10 yuram, 5 minutes with a photograph of someone you loved, and the gate in the morning before anything else. Each one in isolation is small. The challenge is not finding the willpower for any individual item on this list. The challenge is that none of these habits survive in isolation from the others or from the community that makes them default. They are a system. They reinforce each other. The early sleep makes the early waking possible. The early waking makes the morning gate ritual possible. The gate ritual orients the day toward movement. The movement reaches toward people. The people fill the moai. The moai fills the purpose. The purpose is recited at dawn and so on. So here is the one question to sit with. Of the 3 rhythms, the morning rhythm, the movement through the day rhythm, the evening wind down rhythm, which one is the most absent from your current week? Hold the answer. That is the one to start with. You do not need the village or the gate or the hills to begin. The Blue Zone Body Reset was built to hold as much of the system as one walkable 90-day plan can hold. The rhythm, the sequence, the daily anchors adapted for a kitchen in Atlanta, or a yard in Cleveland, or an apartment in Phoenix. The link is in the description below. It is 5:47 in the morning in Ogimi, and the wooden gate at the end of the path is already open. Ushi Okushima stands in the opening for a moment, the way she does every day, looking at the road, the hills, the cool morning air. She is not going anywhere. She is simply here, still part of all of it. Then she turns back toward the garden, and the day begins. Tomorrow at 5 a.m., it begins again. If this story of the centenarians in Ogimi has changed how you view the simple rhythms of your own life, please subscribe and like this video. We are uncovering the ancient wisdom and historical secrets that the modern world has often forgotten. Let's cultivate a healthier future together. Our next exploration into the secrets of longevity will be opening soon.